Hi everybody, welcome again to another program of Yeshiva class, YouTube, and you can catch us at that channel on YouTube anytime. But right now, we're going to speak to you. Today is Tuesday, was it November the 5th, right? Excuse me. November the 13th, right? November the 13th on Tuesday, and this is the date we're recording this program. So we have a lot of information to give over to you, our friends, Jewish brethren, and those that want to learn a little bit more about Torah, like Ivanka Trump, right here. Who is doing the mitzvah of lulav and esrog. She must have searched in many different areas to come up with a God-given way of life in accepting the Torah. Not that she needed it, but she wanted truth and something that's important, a lifestyle that the Torah gives its adherents, and especially the Jewish people who made that covenant with God. And one of the things I want to jump right into before I forget is the age of the earth. It's such an important subject. And the Torah tells us the age of the earth. Let me explain. In the book of Genesis, chapter 7, verse 14, right? It talks about the flood and how the fountains of the deep were split asunder. The fountains of the deep were split asunder, and volcanoes appeared, and through those volcanoes the innards, lava and dust and what have you, were spewed up into the air over the planet Earth. Now we have, I don't know if you can remember, several years ago when we had a volcano erupted in the state of Washington, and the sun was blocked out for several hours and days with that ash and lava. So what happened over here? The fountains were split asunder, the fountains of the deep, and all of that lava came out and encased the living materials, those dinosaurs and all those creatures instantaneously. That's why we find them. These beasts were created on the sixth day of creation, right? The animals and the wild beasts. As if you look into the Jewish Bible, and therefore they were encased, and now we dig them out and we find them in different continents throughout the world, and every so often we come across these wild beasts. And, by the way, these beasts did not go into the ark with Noah, but they were killed in the flood. So what have we? We dig out these creatures, and we reconstruct them, and they say, wow, these were mighty creations. And we determine this is 80 million years of age, this is 40 million years of age. And how do you think they determine the age of the creature. They determine it by the rock where it was found. In other words, if they found it in Jurassic rock, they would give it X amount of years. Cambria, we found another amount of years. And how did they get these numbers? Well, you know, you can't carbon date a rock, right? So what they did, when they go into carbon dating and on vegetable matter, but on rock you can't carbon date. The carbon-14 was determined in the laboratory as far as the years it would take, or the length of time it would take for carbon-14 to disintegrate, right? So when we have vegetable matter, we can look at the carbon-14 in that matter and determine the age by projecting what we found in the laboratory as far as the time necessary for carbon-14 to break down. So they don't take in consideration that the environmental conditions might have been all different and not the same as they figured it out in the laboratory, because they projected it back into ancient times. And here we just explain that the flood and the fountains of the deep and all of that material blocked out the sun and had these water throughout the continent deposit these creatures in different continents and different places, right? So you can't make the assumption that because the laboratory says carbon-14 breaks down at such a rate, given the environmental conditions of the laboratory, they don't take into consideration different eras of time where the environmental conditions are altogether different. So it's all skewed. And just like the Piltdown man in the 30s, they came up with some bone fragments and put it together. Pilt, P-I-L-T, down, D-O-W-N, Piltdown man. And they say, well, this is a precursor to man. And the whole world ran and jubilated because Darwin's theory of man being evolved from different types of predecessor man were proven by this mammal, by this skeleton, by these bone fragments. And then it was determined that it was all a fake. It was all a farce. It was put on by I don't know who, but they determined that these bones did not make up a man, but were collected from different sources. And you can look this up, Google it on Wikipedia. So that's Wikipedia, right? So that's for vegetable matter. But as we said, we can't determine the age of rocks. So what the geologists did, listen to this carefully, they looked at the different types of rocks in the world. Cambria, Precambria, Jurassic, all different types of rocks, and they studied them and they said, well, since Cambria doesn't have any fossils in it, we're going to say that's the oldest rock. And the next oldest rock had simple fossils, simple celled fossils. Not that any rock contained solely simple celled fossils or solely complex fossils. There was always a mixture. But the geologists cut away this parts that they didn't like, and they say this is simple cell, fossil, and the oldest rock. So they said, well, let's make this 90 million years of age. Arbitrarily. They said, 90 million. Next rock is 80 million, has more complex structures, fossils in it. The next is 70 million. They arbitrarily, they determine the age of a rock. And then they said, well, we found this dinosaur in Jurassic rock, embedded in Jurassic rock, and therefore the dinosaur is 80 million years, lived in that era. Now, and the whole world, yeah, it's 80 million years of age. Oh, maybe a few years this way or that way, but it's million years of age. And the whole world buys that. That's gospel. Geologists, TV, all say, we found it, here's the skeletons, we can prove it, here it is, and then it can't be 5,000 years of age, because this is big. It must have been years and years and years, millions and billions. But we know that the creatures, the dinosaurs, who are created on the sixth day of creation, and they were destroyed in the flood, and they were fossilized instantaneously with those eruptions from the volcanoes, and therefore they were found intact. If they had died on the earth, on the surface where they were roaming, then they would have oxidized and they would have breaking down into dust. Okay, there's a little bit you can think about. Read Rabbi Millers' books. Go on Amazon if you're not near a Jewish bookstore. Look up his books that he wrote, not that people wrote about him, but basically all of his thoughts are compiled in the books that he wrote, and specifically they talk about each phrase and the ideology he learns out from the phrases of the Chumash. Now, if we talk about phrases, God made a covenant with the Jewish people. It was given to the rest of the world, but they did not want to accept it. And God made this covenant with the Jewish people, with Abraham to begin with, and we see that Abraham went to many places to speak about the oneness of God, even though Adam and his descendants had the chance to communicate with God, and God spoke with Adam. But nevertheless, by the third generation, his sons was Enosh, was worshiping the servants of God, the stars. So gradually the earth became weak in its commitment to the ideals of which it was set up to be. And for instance, the Torah mentions the sons of Cain, of Lamech, descendants of Cain, the Yabal, Yubal, and Tubal-Cain, who brought entertainment and metallurgy and forging of metals and business, traveling to business. And the world became less enamored with morals and ethics and the teachings of God, but went astray, and eventually lewdness and promiscuity and rape and violence and lawlessness, and God saw that he had to start all over again, and he brought about the flood, right? He brought about the flood, and Noah was the man that he saved. Not that all 100% of the people were evil and did bad, but only when the angel of death is sent, good and bad are wiped out. But Noah had strong tendencies towards spiritual wisdom and the belief in God, and he was saved with his family in that ark, and that ark floated on top of the waters for approximately 1 year. 1 year and 1 month, when the door was open and the raven was sent out. The raven, being an unclean bird, not offered in the temple, as opposed to the dove, which was sent later, and eventually he came back saying that there will be no rest for the sole of your foot. And Jewish people are likened to a dove, and they were exiled for their transgressions, and they had no rest for the sole of their feet, using the same phrase. So he sent out the dove again, and the dove came back with a olive leaf, indicating that he was going to rebuild the earth once more. Like the Jewish people, even though they are exiled, they will come back and rebuild wherever they go, and to bring out their teachings. So the teachings that were given to the Jewish people, to Abraham. And it's interesting to note that when the Jews went down to Egypt during that time of famine, and able to build up a strong people, because Egypt was a powerful nation at that time, and there are no smaller groups that fought each other, but there was self and community control, so to speak. But eventually the Jews began to assimilate. They didn't listen to Joseph, but began to assimilate, intermarriage, and eventually they were brought into slavery. And as predicted, the Jews were to be in exile for 400 years, right? For the children of Abraham were to be in exile for 400 years. And you have Isaac, 60 years. His son Jacob was 130 when he went to Egypt to live with Joseph and his brothers. That was 190, and they were 210 years in Egypt before God brought them out. And it's interesting to note over there in Exodus chapter 19 verse 6, it says over there that God spoke to the Jewish people through Moses, saying, that if you listen to my words and you follow the covenant, right? The covenant that Abraham made with God, then you will be a nation of prophets. Malchei Kohanim. You will be a nation of priests. You will be a nation of priests if you listen to my word and obey the covenant. And all the people said, Nasa, we will do it. We will listen to your words. And that's what transpired. It says, Nasa, we will listen. Right? First person plural. But it doesn't say I will listen, because Nasa means we, including the dependence of the utterers of that phrase. So they came to the mountain, and God was giving them the words of the Ten Commandments, right? It was given to the Jewish people. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage. First person says, I am the Lord your God, the God of the Jewish people. There's all kind of nations in the world, and they all have different gods. But they say we all believe in one God. I don't know how that makes sense. If they're saying they believe in different gods and have different types of beliefs and practices, so how can you say that we all believe in one God? But the Jewish people believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and therefore we continue that belief and continue this in that same vein, listening to the Ten Commandments orally, never given to them on that holiday of Shavuos, right? 7 weeks after going out of Egypt and slavery, and they accepted those teachings, those words, because God said in Exodus 24:13, told Moses, come up to the mountain, and I will give you the stone tablets, the teachings, which is the oral law, which is the Midrashim and the Agadata, and the commandments, the oral law, and you should teach them. Now, we have in Judaism many different types of teachings. And the written Bible, the Torah, was given to the Jewish people, dictated by God to Moses. That's in Deuteronomy, I believe it's chapter 21, in Deuteronomy, I don't remember I think it's 21, where God dictates chapter 21 dictates the written Bible to the Jewish people. Now, at that time, the 40 years that they were in the desert, they also learned the explanation of the written Bible, right? You know, like it says over there in Deuteronomy 12:21, you should slaughter the cattle according to how I taught you. What do I mean, how I taught you? In other words, the oral law comes in to explain all the particulars of how you slaughter and which animals are kosher for slaughtering. And if there is a blemish, some kind of a outside blemish, like a broken leg, or a mouth that is shaped like a different animal, or different kinds of things that are only, that will be permanent, a permanent permanent blemish, is not permissible to eat, even though the animal is kosher, not permissible to eat. And the bechor, the firstborn of one of these kosher animals, which automatically goes to the kohen, if it has a permanent blemish, then it can be slaughtered and eaten by the kohen. But if it has a temporary blemish, something like something in eyes, the Gemara talks about that, then you can't eat it until it dies of its own, and then you can use the profit of that animal. So you may say, well, you know, it's so boring to the Talmud. What does that have to do with today? You know, who needs that kind of work? Is it applicable to today? But there is application to it today, as we expressed in the slaughtering of animals. And in addition, it's the logic that is brought down by the different teachers, by the different rabbis, and the sentences they use to buttress their argument. So it's such a beautiful book. And you know, now ArtScroll came out with a English version of the Talmud. So you don't need a teacher. I mean, people don't have time to go to classes with their schedules being so varied, but you can get a book yourself. This paper book are only $10. Get it in a paper book, Talmud on brachas, the first Talmud on the saying and the importance of the blessings that a Jew performs every day. Now, it mentions, right, that we have the stone tablets, and everything was. This is a picture of the portable temple, right? And here is the Holy of Holies, and this is divided into two parts, and one part being the Holy of Holies, where the ark is kept with the tablets. With the tablets, the ark is kept. So that area is open to the Kohen Gadol during Yom Kippur. And here is the enclosure, and this is the ark. This is the altar where the offerings are brought, and goes into detail of the different parts inside the holy area of the tabernacle, and that's where the voice of God came between the cherubim, the angelic, here's a picture, the angelic figures that hovered over the ark, where the Ten Commandments, the tablets, were placed. And this was placed in the Holy of Holies. And these are the poles, badim, where the people, the Kohen, would carry to the next place where the ark was to be sent up. And this is the picture of the ark with the gold, the acacia wood, and the gold, 3 containers into one, and then deposited the 10 Commandments written on stone. And underneath there was an area for the first tablets that were broken, because Moshe would not stand for any compromise. And he saw the people dancing around, he didn't want to compromise, and he threw the tablets down. The only divine object that was given to mankind. So that was their chore, to keep the commandments, keep the covenant. And we have in chapter 20 in Exodus, read it, you see they heard the 10 Commandments, and then in addition, where they were camped around Mount Sinai, they got the Eile Mishpatim right after that in chapter 21. Those laws, chapter 21, chapter 22, chapter 23, and chapter 24, all these civil laws, the torts, and all the different laws that pertain to man, between man and man, reasons for barring commitment to for lost articles. All these things are contained in those chapters and are just as holy as the 10 Commandments, because they were given by God at the same time. Chapter 20, the oral words of the 10 Commandments, and chapter 21 through 24, the other commandments. The other commandments that want us to practice between man and man, where Western civilization bases its laws on. So it's interesting to note that in chapter 24, God told Moses to put these in a book. It's called Sefer HaBris, which was later incorporated into the 5 books of Moses, our Torah, right? The Torah. So that was in 24 and chapter 24 in Exodus, and we want to continue on to Deuteronomy, where it says 29, chapter 29, verse 11. Now you have to write these numbers down and look them up, because it's just one thing that, you know, you're only going to get 10% of what I'm saying if you don't review it, if you don't look up the chapter and verse that I gave you, because you're not going to get anything of significance if you're just going to be a catcher, like the adult education that transpires throughout the synagogue world where the speaker does all the talking. And it must be open to the populace, where there's one big room. Throw away the gymnasium. Open that room up for people who want to learn. And when a person comes in, maybe they're at a very high level, they don't need a teacher, they can work with partners or they can work themselves, but you have a quiet atmosphere. And then if you have a novice, a person just starting out, you can show books on ideology or read the portion of the Torah that is going to be read that day, that week on Shabbos, and so forth and so on, so that you can have a place with an environment that is conducive to learn with non-interruptions. Like, and you have a mashgiach on premises. A mashgiach is a person who can help you answer any problems that you have, whatever you're reading, because he knows all the subject matter, right? He knows all the matter. He can help you answer questions. But this is what you have to have done. You need a Beis HaMedrash, you need a study hall. And if I had the money, that was the first thing that I would do. And this way we can show the beauty of Torah with everyone participating. And you know, by the way, Moses, when he spoke to Pharaoh, to let the people go in 9:16 or in Exodus 9:16 or 9:23, he says over there that let my people go that they may serve me throughout the world. That they may serve me throughout the world. And that is our charge in life, that we are to set up Bate Midrashim, places of study hall, so that the people can come, ask, and participate. And throughout our lifetime, we must work in performing the commandments that were given to us, and that was incumbent upon us to perform as sons of the covenant. And that sign is the circumcision of the male after 8 days. That's a sign that you are a member and a believer of the covenant that was given to us, given to the Jewish people, to our forefathers, and for his descendants. Because then you look in 17 and Genesis 17:19, the covenant of Abraham will go towards and through his son Isaac, through his son Isaac. So we're recipients of those teachings. And if you look in 29:11 in Deuteronomy, write it down, 29:11, people were to pass through the covenant that Abraham had originally made, and it included the imprecations, the curses, the possible curses that might occur if you go astray. That might occur if you go astray. Because all Jews inherit the world to come. That's in Sanhedrin, Gemara Sanhedrin 70a, right? All Jews inherit the world to come, except those that broke away from the covenant, like Korach. Even though he saw Moses receive the 10 Commandments with the rest of the Jewish people, yet he had a different idea that went against the teachings, and he broke away from the covenant. And Yerovam ben Nevat, the same thing with him. He brought the 10 tribes into a different nation, and he does not get the Olam Haba. He stands away from his ancestors who did get it. And today we have the same situation, where people in the 21st century know what's important, and they don't need a Shabbos to hinder them in making whatever they want to enjoy, and making more money, or working harder and work 7 days a week. And we don't need these so-called impotents to stop our growth. We don't need these seemingly difficult matters. And in addition, it's a testing world. It's a testing world. And you know, today in the Orthodox non-Hasidic world, it's very difficult to stay attuned to the teachings and the practices, because we're busy with work and the soccer mom and all of that things. We don't have any free time, and we need to get a good job before we get married. We have to have a degree, and till one gets married, there's very little that can come out of those unions as far as children, as opposed to the Hasidim or the Black Hat or the God-fearing 24/7 days a week man, the Haredis, because beginning, as it says in Mishlei Proverbs, the beginning of wisdom is the fear of God, the awe of God, and to realize that everything is from God, and emphasize that, especially on the Shabbos table. We take on one of the creations and examine it, and you see, for instance, the common louse that hooks on, cements itself to a hair follicle, and has this ability to exude this cement-like substance, and therefore can't be washed out. And then it has a viscous or the ability to make a wound in the host's scalp, and then has in its system a anticoagulant, another type of liquid that will not let the blood of the host coagulate, because if it coagulates, it would not be able to suck out the blood. So it has an anticoagulant built in. Now, you want to tell me that evolved? Oh, it didn't happen. It didn't happen overnight. It took millions and billions and billions of years. It took many, many years. Look, you can have a car disassembled, all the car pieces disassembled, and it can sit there for millions and millions of years. If no one is around to assemble it, if no outside force to put that car together, it's not going to be assembled. And that's what it is. Nothing works, no living creature works, unless it was given the power to do so, and they both have the ability to, these living creatures, to eat, that is necessary for their living, and the process to defend themselves. Every living creature has that, from the porcupine, right, all the way to the skunk. And they didn't evolve. The needles on a porcupine didn't evolve, or the smell of the skunk did not evolve. So today it's a testing world. Look, God didn't give us a free ticket to get to the next world, but He gave us the chance to get there. But He's going to put stumbling blocks in His way. He's not going to make it easy for you, because it says in Deuteronomy, write it down, chapter 30, verse 19. Chapter 30, verse 19 says, I put before you life and death. Choose life that you might live. Again, that's in Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 19, the Bible, the Jewish Bible, the 5 books of Moses, given to the Jewish people to earn the next world. I put before you life and death. Choose life that you might live. Choose, the word choose there means choose righteously wherever there is a vicissitude or a change or a new obstacle that you might have to face. You have to choose virtuously. You know, it said in 8:21 in Exodus, right? In Exodus, it says, "The inclination of man is evil from his youth." The inclination of man is evil from his youth. After Noah got out of the ark and he went after the wine, which is important, it stimulates the brain to develop a closeness to God, but not overindulgence. So what happened? Inclination of man is evil from his youth. What does that mean? Man is evil? Man, he had a first sin, and therefore he's evil? No, that's not what it means. It means like this. The inclination, the tendency of a man is like as follows. For instance, God gave a pleasurable, everything that God gave man is for His pleasure. For instance, eating, it's for His pleasure and enjoyment. But if you take someone else's food, then that is evil, right? If you have a hand and you can work with it, fine, but not if you're going to be angry and hit someone. So all these things that God created were for the benefit of man, but his inclination is tested constantly from the time he's born to choose the virtuous, to choose the right path. And that needs, unless one does not have spiritual wisdom, a strong meaning, a strong inborn quality of spiritual wisdom. You know, like people have aptitudes for sports, even though their parents had nothing to do with sports, or with music. You know, Leonard Bernstein, or whether it was his parents musicians. No, it means that God has given the Jewish people higher intelligence than the general populace. Look at the doctors, the lawyers, they're all Jews. But I mean, not all Jews, but the top and many, out of percentage-wise, are Jews. And they were to use that IQ together, hopefully, with a strong spiritual wisdom that might have been implanted on him, to use it in a constructive manner to earn holiness points, righteousness, right? To earn righteousness. That is his charge in life, to be faced with many vicissitudes in life, many changes that he goes through. But you're always to choose virtuously, righteously. And of course, hopefully, you can rectify yourself on Yom Kippur. We're talking about the Jewish people. I don't know what the Goyim believe in, but the Jews have the opportunity to right themselves. This is a testing world. Many places in the Torah uses the word testing, right? Chapter 8:2, I afflicted you and tested you to see if you kept the commandments or not. I mean, there's a whole litany of places where it's tested. I tested you. If a prophet arises at 12:2, if a prophet arises amongst your people and he tells you, he performs a miracle, he tells you to go after other gods, you're not to believe him. It is a test. Many places it's a test. Now, how many people can overcome these tests, can pass these tests? And in addition, there's another cog thrown into the machinery, and that is evil. That is the evil inclination, right? The evil inclination. It says over in chapter 4:7 in Genesis, sin crouches at the door, right? Sin crouches at the door. It's like the snake, or the evil inclination was in the form of a snake when it attacked Hava and Adam. But now it says the sin crouches at the door. Its desire is for you, to you, but you can overcome. Right? Sin crouches at the door. Its desire is for you, to you. And that's another cog in the machinery. We have to overcome our eyes, and our heart leads us astray. We have to overcome that. Who can do that? And that's what happened during our exile. During our exile, right? We were constantly tested, and many went astray. They went over to the major religion, and they did all kind of things and what have you. I think I'm out of time, but if I am not, I may be wrong. And I'm just checking with the 53. I'm just checking with the producer, yours truly, and he tells me we have another 7 minutes. So, getting back to the subject matter, this is a test. It's testing. Tested you. Afflicted you. Chapter 8, verse 2. Tested you and afflicted you to see what is in your heart, to see whether you kept the commandments or not. That is our job. And it's not like, the modern type young Israel where they can, where they get a degree in some very difficult subject, a vocation, and in addition they get a rabbinic degree, and they're constantly learning. But many that's able to withstand all these attacks that wants to do away with important subject matter. Now let's get back to the subject of Israel. You know, this is November the 13th, Tuesday, and just last week, Tel Aviv Council in a decision 19-6, instituted public transportation on the Shabbos, public transportation on the Sabbath. And right after that, you see the rockets started to fall onto the land of Israel, and they even were very close to the city of Tel Aviv. So, you know, everything is tied in, and what has been our biggest failure is the fact that we have not bridged the gulf between the uninformed, ignoramuses, and the observant. And even though Chabad is carrying on a tremendous amount of work, still there's much to be done, and as a result, we must constantly look out for our brethren and the world, because it says in chapter 29-28 in Deuteronomy, I will address the hidden sins that man does, but those that are revealed to all man is to bring that person closer and to instruct him in the right way, because we are all brothers and we all help each other out. So that's important, so that we may realize that we all can earn a seat in the next world, into the next world. And how many people realize that that's the nature? So did we wanted to touch on the Agadata and the Medrashim, because the Bible was given, a written Bible was given with many words that were not complete in spelling differently in many contexts. So sometimes a letter is left out, sometimes another letter is added, and that's those are secrets. Those are teachings. Look at Exodus 24:13. These are teachings that we get from those words, and the people in the desert, those 40 years, and afterwards the heads of the Beis Din and the learned people developed teachings from the letters and the construct of the words in the sentences. And with that, they came up with many stories, because everything was not to be interpreted literally, but they were hidden, secretive, so that we know what the true meaning is. So the Midrashim and the Aguda and the Agadata is brought down in the Gemara, and those have been compiled, and that's a study in itself. So you have the written Torah, you have the oral Torah, you have the Midrashim, we learn out, and you have the commandments, which is the oral Torah, explaining in detail how to observe that. And so that's in 24:13. Exodus 24:13. God says, "Come up, Moses, ascend to the mountain, and I will give you." Now he will give them the stone tablets. Right before it was only spoken. Give you the stone tablets. I will give you the teachings, the commandments, and the written teachings. So there's a lot to review, a lot to learn, but for the novice out there, get a Art Scrolls Bible, right? Get an Art Scrolls Bible. Here, I have one over here, and it has the 24 books of the Bible and the 5 books of Moses, and read the portion for the week as much as you can do, as much time as you have, and then look at the book of Rabbi Miller, who got it from Sinai. He got it through Slobodka in Poland, wrote it down, and you'll get the ideology, and hopefully you'll get enjoyment out of all your teachings. With that, I'm going to wish you a very good day, and God bless. Thank you.